Chased by gang members at midnight. Hello, long-time lurker here. I wanted to share with you guys what was by far the most creepy night I've lived. I'm a 22-year-old male, currently living in what is considered one of the most dangerous cities to live in the world. I've been robbed 3 times, twice gun, once knife, and also I found myself caught in another 2 robbery scenarios, although fortunately, I got out relatively clean from these. Living in a place with such high crime rate, one would think that taking a job at another city, without transport provided by the company, and no vehicle of my own to move around would be insane, especially if you get to work out past midnight. But I guess I was just a madman. And this job was particularly a tough one for me. It was a clothing store, without a doubt, the biggest and most famous clothing store of the country, and this was the main reason why I accepted it. I had the general feeling of being part of something huge. I was 18 years old when this happened. We were a group of 13 males in charge of cleaning the place up, since this was a new location, and some of the areas were still in construction, and the inauguration date was coming. Therefore, we had to coexist with a construction team. The atmosphere was pretty nice overall, even though they came from another state, and only talked to 2 or 3 of us. They would often joke or give you fist bumps if you crossed them around the building. Then, this particular night, we had a ton of work to do. Took care of 4 merchandise trucks, and finished at around 2 a.m. We were exhausted as hell, but happy because we did such an incredible job, being only 8 guys. 5 had already quit at this point, so we got it at 2 a.m., hoping our work would be good enough for our supervisor to, at least, get us a taxi to go home. But no, this bastard took his car and left it there hanging. I guess he expected us to walk home. So there we were, ditched in another city at 2 a.m., without another soul on the streets. We started walking, hoping, I don't know what, maybe some good-hearted driver would give us a ride. Us, 8 adult males. For sure, a stranger would trust us to let us in their cars, right? Yeah, whatever. Well, it might just seem like it. Not long before we started walking, a car stopped us. I soon recognized a few members of the construction team who invited one of us, Alex, into their car. They would give him a ride home because they were friends with his brother. Alex took their invite and hopped into the back seat with them. I was looking at the vehicle going in the distance, thinking that it was going to be a long-ass night searching for a ride. My parents must be dead worried at home. Food must be delicious in my bed. My beautiful bed. Then, the car started coming back in reverse to us. They opened the backseat door, and Alex asked John, another one of us, if he had his phone, Alex's phone, that he had given it to him earlier tonight, and John kept refusing. Alex jumped out of the vehicle and said that maybe he had left it back in the building, that we should get back and get it. Alright, let's go. But all of us were confused. I couldn't believe we were going back, and I was a little annoyed when we crossed the street. And at no sight of the car, Alex took his backpack and started swinging in the air like crazy. He was furious and crying and mumbling to himself. He went and sat on a corner and kept saying things we couldn't understand. When we finally got him to talk, he said that after he got in the vehicle and they took off, he was being pointed at with guns. Apparently, his brother was a cop, and the construction team were gang members not happy with him, and that they had shot him earlier and Alex was next. As to why they had let him get out of the car, no frickin' idea. Maybe they were just that sick. Because soon, we heard the car's engine, and we knew we had to flee. They were coming for us. Except we had no idea where to go. The best thing we could think of was to run to the city's main square, which wasn't far, and it was known for having a military spot located there, as most squares do. Finally, living in a military state would pay off somehow, so we started running on the streets, and this is when I realized that if we managed to not get shot by these howling gang members, yes, they started to howl as they slowly chased us. We were all certainly going to get shot by the police, because honestly, we had more a criminal-looking appearance than the guys chasing us, and we live under the shoot first, ask questions later policy. As we continued our way to the square, all of a sudden, they turned around and left us. We stopped to catch our breath, and after a couple minutes, talking about what had just happened, we took another direction wary of our surroundings. Soon, we encountered 2 fellas who were having a drink at a bar, and they were nice enough to give us a ride back home. during our way back home. I wasn't completely aware of what had happened. The next 2 days I couldn't go to work because my body condition wasn't good. I was and still am thin. This work required stamina, and the work we did that night got the best of me. When I finally was good to go back, I noticed the construction guys were still there, and I thought maybe they were just pulling a prank on us the other night. But Alex had quit, and not long after, another incident happened. John had bought a motorcycle, and he was leaving earlier than us. This is why I was baffled when we found him on the highway. Someone had popped his bike's wheel, and when he couldn't go any longer, the same car showed up and stole his bike, leaving him there in the middle of the highway, in the middle of the night. Luckily at this time, the company had provided us a bus, and we found him and could pick him up. He wanted to go on the direction he thought the car had gone to, but there was no way that was happening. We had to keep seeing these guys at the building for about 2 more weeks, when they finally finished the construction and picked up their tools. Reporting them to the police would have been useless, and I'm pretty sure we weren't going to have our supervisor's support. He was a douchebag sucking up to his superior with no personality whatsoever. Sorry if this took too long. I tried to make it as short as possible. If you read it off, thank you so much. Apologies for any typos and mistakes. English isn't my main language. Almost robbed by Nartano gang members in California. This happened in 2008-2009. It seems fitting for the subreddit, though it wasn't exactly creepy. I was at a late-night beach fire in San Francisco, thrown by a group of predominantly white college students. Upon arrival, I noticed there was a lot of Hispanic Norteno gang members who I'd never seen before. After one gets right up in my face and asked me who I was. It was dark, and I was dressed more menacingly than most of the other kids there. Less than 5 minutes later I got there. My neighbor, who was on top of a hill, got robbed at gunpoint and then beaten to the ground, and with that, the other Latino just started attacking students, beating them down, 2, sometimes 3 or more to a single victim, pounding them into submission and taking their possessions. My roommate's friend actually got tackled, the aforementioned hill, and then beaten by 2 guys right next to us. My roommate didn't even bother trying to save his homeboy, so he just left him to be robbed. I escaped unaccosted because I was brandishing my knife, and nobody wanted to see my motherfucking ass, but it was still frightening, and I was stopped by the police as a witness, on my way out of there. Weird Student Gang. I decided to share my story on here, after lurking on the subreddit for a few weeks, and have observed that the community here is overall mature and supportive. A couple things first. I'm from Singapore, a small Southeast Asian country, where most of the middle school, or known as secondary school here students, wear uniform with school badges pinned on the left breast pocket or on the left collar. And back then in the 1980s, guys who were around grade 7 to grade 8, lower secondary, wear knee-length shorts as part of the uniform, while those in grades 9 and 10, upper secondary, wear full-length pants. This encounter took place in 1987, when I was in lower secondary, aged 12. Finally, no, I did not read Stephen King's It until the TV miniseries came out a few years later. It was after school, and I decided to take one of the numerous routes home, which was walking from a bus stop that is about a mile away from home. The route was along a small road that is through a quiet, affluent neighborhood before hitting a busy main road right next to where my home is, so it was pretty remote, with no passerby most of the time, and at most, a car or 2 traveling along the small road. It was around 7 p.m., the sky was still very bright, and the road was quiet as usual. I was in deep thoughts about preparing for upcoming exams before I heard some quick footsteps close behind me. I moved to the side and let whoever the person was to walk past me. It was not a person, but a group of students from another school. 5 guys in white shirts with olive pants, while I was in white shirt with navy blue shorts. Then they suddenly stopped and boxed me in. All 5 of them were at least 1 foot taller than me. I was around 4 feet then, and they had that weird, serious look on their typical faces of young schoolboys, and gave off a really weird vibe. I was very frightened, fearing that these 5 could be one of those juvenile gangs I had heard of. I was frantically searching for any other passerby or any car on the road, anything that I could call for help. However, there were only 6 of us on the road. Then I noticed they did not have school badges on their shirts. Probably they did not want to reveal which school they were belonged to. This is not good. What did these seniors want from me? I was on the brink of tearing up. I was frozen in fear. My mind was in a mess. Couldn't think of getting myself out of the situation. It was a long, awkward silence of us staring at each other before one of them said, "Friend?" and reached out his right hand, gesturing for me to shake it. I was hesitating for a while, confused by this sudden turn of events, before I slowly reached out my right hand to shake it. Then I was hit by the left shoulder by another guy, probably irked by my unwillingness to shake the hand, and said, "Why? You don't want to be friends with us? Come follow us," said the first guy whom I shook hands with. They then aggressively herded me towards a T-junction ahead of us, despite my repeated pleas that I needed to go back home for dinner soon. There we turned right to another small road and stopped near a storm drain cover. One of them proceeded to lift the drain cover and climb down through the opening to the drain below. "Come, we have good stuff down here," said the first guy before he climbed down. The remaining 3 pushed me closer to the opening, prompting me to climb down as well. I stood there, hesitated. The sky was getting dark. I was panicky and was desperately hoping someone else will appear to save me from the moment. Anyone. Then the second guy hit me on the shoulder again. "Why? You scared?" Thanks to that hit, I suddenly had an idea. I crouched down and pretended to tie my shoelace, waiting for an opening to make a run for it. Then another one proceeded to climb down the opening. I looked up and noticed the remaining 2 did not pay attention to me. I dashed off immediately and ran as fast as I could. And then I looked back. From their shouts and the sound of their footsteps, I knew there were at least 2 of them chasing me, and they were catching up. Still, no sign of any other passerby or car, and it was only about 200 meters around the left bend before the main road was in sight. I was crying and shouting for help throughout. Suddenly, I felt a hard tug on my backpack. My heart skipped a beat. Instinctively, I let go of my backpack and continued to run. I'm not certain whether I ran really fast or just gave up chasing after they got my backpack, but I managed to make it to the familiar streetlight-lit main road, and I shouted at the passerby there for help. Thankfully, a kind, elderly lady walked towards me and embraced me while I ran towards her in tears and out of breath. My pursuers were no longer in sight. The kind lady escorted me to my home, where I broke down again as I recounted my encounter to my parents. Later, we made a police report. As I left my house key in my backpack, we went back to the same location with the police officers, where I pointed out the particular drain cover. The 5 students were not down there, of course, and my backpack was never recovered. I avoided that particular route for the rest of my middle school years, and to the 5 guys who traumatized me, no, I still do not want to be your friend. The boy in the hoodie. Ever since I started running as a teenager, I've always gone running in whatever neighborhood I've lived in. I did my neighborhood running for 6 years without any issues. Then I moved into a somewhat run-down area when I was in my late 20s. I didn't really let it deter me, and continued my neighborhood runs undaunted. For the most part, people either ignored me or were very kind to me. Then one day I was doing my normal run. I had my headphones in and was spacing out to the music. Earlier, I had run past a group of people, but I didn't take much notice of them. Something now compelled me to stop my run and turn my head. Immediately, a hooded figure almost plowed into me. He had to have been jogging incredibly close to me for God knows how long. He took a step back with an incredibly surprised look, and I realized that he was just a boy. maybe 13. I was annoyed but not threatened, so I brushed him off and continued my jog. Something didn't sit right with me. I kept looking back, and the boy in the hoodie was still following me. But what was weird was he looked really, really uncomfortable, like he didn't want to do this. After a near run-in, he kept his distance, but continued to follow me throughout the neighborhood. Every turn I took, he took as well. I changed my route, and he followed. Finally, I sprinted towards a blind corner, took it, and scrambled into some nearby bushes. It felt absolutely ridiculous hiding from a child, but I wanted to confirm that he was indeed following me. Sure enough, I watched the boy in the hoodie walk down the street, clearly looking for me. Something about it just made my blood run cold. Sure, kids are stupid, and maybe he was playing a game, but he looked so frightened I was certain this was not a game in which he was playing. I wondered if someone older had seen me jogging in the neighborhood and put him up to following me to see where I lived. I wasn't sure if that was paranoid thinking, or really what to think. As soon as the boy disappeared, I climbed out of the bushes with zero dignity and hauled ass home. I called my now ex-husband and told him what happened. He assured me that I wasn't being paranoid, and that it was incredibly odd that a kid was following me around my running route, and it was especially odd that he seemed frightened rather than puckish. I changed my running route for a while after that, but it didn't take long for me to feel absolutely silly for being terrified of a child. I went back to my normal jogs around the neighborhood. About 3 months later, I encountered the boy again. It was about 11 o'clock at night, and same as before, I suddenly felt uncomfortable, and I turned around to see the boy following me, albeit at a distance this time. He wasn't wearing a hoodie this time, just a white t-shirt, and this time, I was more furious than afraid. I stopped in the middle of my run, took out my headphones. He stopped too. I asked him why he was following me. He didn't say a word. He just stared at the front of his shirt. I called my husband and asked him to come get me, because I was sure as hell not going to let this boy find out where I lived. So I waited at the corner of the street, and I watched the boy hide behind a truck tire. When my husband arrived, I told him that the boy was hiding behind a truck tire. Instead of taking me home, my husband pulled up behind the truck and threw on his high beams to illuminate the boy, who was leaning against the tire and hugging his knees. My husband got out of the car and asked the boy why he was following me. The explanation that came out of the boy was incoherent babble that my husband could not make any sense of. To be honest, the kid was probably just frightened of the very angry man who was looming over him, but he insisted that he wasn't following me, and said something about waiting for a friend with a bicycle and other incoherent things. After the boy finished, my husband shrugged and said, "Fine, whatever. But I don't ever want to find out that you're following my wife again, got it?" The boy nodded, and my husband got in the car and drove me home. One thing that still doesn't sit well with me is how frightened that boy looked the 2 times I saw him. I honestly don't think he wanted to follow me, and I'll never find out why he went out of his way to follow me. Or what was it that scared him so much? I don't go running in my neighborhood anymore.